Is Zach Wilson a bust? The New York Jets have a winning record. They're very close to a complete team. There's just one problem, and it's the most important position on the field. Zach Wilson threw 3 interceptions against the Patriots, a game that, if they had won, would have exercised 2 decades worth of demons for the Jets. New York looked like they were ready to make that step, and then Wilson, oh no, threw the game away, marking their 13th straight loss to the Patriots and proving that the Jets are truly just a quarterback away from being real, serious contenders in the AFC. Can they do it with Wilson, or is he already a bust? We're gonna find out today as we go balls deep into Zach Wilson. Hey, as somebody who is a bust on YouTube, I know a thing or two to subscribe to this channel. Today's episode is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. If you want to test your skills against me in weekly fantasy leagues, download the Underdog app or go to underdogfantasy.com and use my code Thatsgood. There is a link below for this week's fantasy draft. I'll have the details in the description, but as soon as the league is full, the draft begins. Most are 6 rounds. It's really simple. You just draft your team in my league, and whoever scores the most points that week wins. Now, if you want to use your brain for pick'ems or bigger prizes and live in one of the qualifying states, you can win up to 20 times your money. Build a pick'em entry with 2 to 5 players and guess higher or lower in stat totals for the week. Or pit 2 players against each other in the Rivals contest. Again, use my code Thatsgood or the link below, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. All right, let's go back to Draper, Utah, where Zach Wilson, the son of a defensive lineman at Utah, was a dual threat quarterback at Corner Canyon High School. Wilson was all set to become a Boise State Bronco, but when he saw the greatness that was Brett Rippon, Wilson opted for nearby BYU, where he could have a chance to start right away. Now, Wilson never did a Mormon mission at BYU, just a more mom's mission, exploring the thick bushes of MILFland. Wilson started 7 games as a 19-year-old freshman, even becoming the youngest BYU QB to start in team history. I guess that's not really saying much, considering most of their quarterbacks are in their late 20s. Thanks in part, though, to a little bit of a learning curve as well as a shoulder injury, Zach Wilson never really looked like Zach Wilson until 2020. And that's a big reason why he was, or should have been, such a tricky evaluation as a quarterback. Here are Zach Wilson's numbers as a freshman and a sophomore. Certainly nothing eye-popping whatsoever there. And then in a full season, in 2021, he absolutely went off. Wilson combined for 43 total touchdowns and just 3 interceptions on the year. That's a stellar season. This kind of leap in just one season was far from unprecedented. Just the year before, Joe Burrow went from a very run-of-the-mill quarterback at LSU to fucking Joe Burrow, putting together probably the greatest passing season in recent college football history. And after Joe Shiesty looked like the real deal in limited action as a rookie, that taught a lot of evaluators that maybe we don't need to be as suspicious of one-year wonders as we should be. But there are a lot of differences between Burrow and Wilson that I'll touch on in a bit. It's like some of those baseball players from the 90s who had no power and then seemingly overnight started hitting 50 dingers. Now, I'm not saying Zach Wilson took steroids or anything. I mean, just look at him. If anything, he's taking some sort of weird drug to make sure he has the whitest DNA on Earth. Which, yes, he does get from Kirk Cousins' drug dealer. It turned out, though, that one season was good enough for Zach Wilson to leapfrog over Justin Fields and Trey Lance to become the number 2 quarterback on most draft boards. Fields and Trevor Lawrence both had better full college careers, and Trey Lance, well, he was a very special case because he's only played like 3 football games, ever. 2 years in, and all of these quarterbacks actually look bad. Now, it turns out that Zach Wilson had a Burrow-type leap in 2020, in part because he studied Joe Burrow. Wilson was so obsessed with Burrow that he got YouTube TV and DVR'd all of LSU's games so he could go back and study the #1 overall pick from 2020. Now, I won't be the one to point out that watching the broadcast footage versus coach's film will help you almost none as a quarterback. I will not point that out. Wilson also made the trek from Utah to Southern California so he could train with quarterback coach John Beck, who was also training quarterbacks like Justin Herbert, Matt Ryan, and Matthew Stafford at the time. Wilson was training with Beck, going back to Utah for practices, and working as a DoorDash driver to afford gas and expenses. And for the love of God, you better pray your mom doesn't order some Thai food and open the door to Zach Wilson, because you might have a new stepdad before the food is even done cooling. And it arrives almost cold. Here's the difference between Wilson and Burrow, at least in my opinion. Joe Burrow had the ability to create and move around his last year at LSU, yes, but his bread and butter was playing within the structure, within the offense that Joe Brady created for him. Burrow honed his mechanics and his understanding of the playbook. Wilson did work on those things, don't get me wrong, but he didn't develop a laser-quick processing mind like Joe Burrow. Burrow seems to look at the field with Terminator vision, except when Joe Burrow plays the Browns, of course. I don't know what happens there. Now, Wilson dominated his junior season a lot because of his ability to improvise, extend plays, and make unconventional throws off schedule. A little like Johnny Manziel, honestly. There's a good number of quarterbacks that can pull that off at the college level. There's a few guys that can do it occasionally in the NFL. And there's 2 guys that do it consistently in the NFL. And their names just happen to be Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. But those 2 guys also balance the absurd playmaking with consistent, on-time, on-scheduled throws where they execute the plays as they are designed. But the New York Jets, like plenty of other teams and draft experts, were blown away by Wilson's 2020 season, and especially his pro day at BYU, where he made an unbelievable throw across his body. It's easy to get suckered in by these kinds of throws, I know. And the ability to make these kinds of throws certainly aren't a bad thing, but I think we are stuck in a moment in 2021 where we had just seen a 3rd year of Patrick Mahomes, a breakout season from Josh Allen, where 2 quarterbacks met in the AFC Championship game that season. Everyone wanted the next Mahomes or the next Josh Allen. The new idea was that you need to have a playmaker. You don't want a distributor like Tua, who struggled as a rookie in 2020 and certainly didn't light it up in 2021. Wilson lost his first game in the NFL to the guy he replaced in New York, Sam Darnold. But that game wasn't a cause for concern. In week 2 of his rookie season, we learned that when things go wrong for Zach Wilson, they can go very, very wrong. Wilson's first 2 pass attempts against the Patriots were picked off. He threw 4 total interceptions in that game and followed up that performance by getting shut out at Denver, tossing another pair of interceptions and looking generally inept for the 2nd straight week in a row. Now, to be fair to Wilson, 7 of his career interceptions have come against Belichick defenses. Bill Belichick is the Jeffrey Dahmer to opposing quarterbacks, because he feasts on them, and he enjoys every bite.
I'm just gonna grab a burger.
Eat the sandwich, I made it for you.
I'll eat it later.
I want to see you try it. Eat it.
But Wilson finally showed some flashes of what he could become in his first career win in week 4 against the Tennessee Titans. Wilson made some incredible throws in that game that reminded everyone why he was the 2nd overall pick in the draft, including a beautiful deep ball to Corey Davis that gave the Jets the lead in the 4th quarter. Wilson actually started to remind me a bit of one Jay Cutler with his quick release and strong arm, but like Cutler, he's hit or miss on whether or not he's able to harness that arm and not become addicted to trusting his arm strength too much. Ultimately, Wilson finished his rookie season with a record of 3-10, but more importantly, a completion percentage of just 55 and just 6 yards per attempt. All bad. But from the Titans game on, Wilson actually threw 7 touchdowns and just 4 picks on the season, running for another 4 touchdowns. The more Braxton Berrios got involved in the Jets passing game, the better Wilson played. Berrios this season has just 11 receptions, so he might be the missing link. That momentum that he picked up at the end of 2021 did not carry over to 2022. While the team around him has gotten better thanks to the additions of Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, and for part of the season, Breece Hall, who was on Rookie of the Year pace, it looks like Wilson has taken a step back. And even though he has just given us a full sample size equaling 1 NFL season, that is a concern. A big reason I think Wilson's development has been stunted is injury. He did miss 4 games in 2021, and of course 3 here in 2022. That said, unlike Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, and even old Davis Mills, he's had coaching consistency. That's really important for young QBs, which is why, if comparing his production to those other guys, I can't use injury as an excuse. Wilson has won 4 of the first 5 games he started in 2022 after recovering from another injury stemming back to the preseason, but it's hard to say he's been truly responsible for any of those victories. In fact, in 4 wins, Wilson has thrown just 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions, all of which came against the Steelers. In wins against Miami, Green Bay, and Denver, Wilson threw neither an interception nor a touchdown, and the team asked him to throw just 55 times in those games. For reference, Joe Flacco threw the ball 59 times in the Jets' Week 1 loss against the Ravens. Anyone who watched that game against Denver would tell you that Wilson was not responsible for that win. In fact, if the referees hadn't blown a play dead, he might have just cost the Jets that game with an extremely boneheaded fumble. But those chickens came home to roost against New England. There was a little bit of luck involved. Fellow 2021 QB Mac Jones had a pick 6 erased in the first half thanks to a roughing the passer call. So instead of the game being 17-3 in favor of the Jets, it remained a 1-score game, and Zach Wilson proceeded to throw it all away. The same way he threw away all of his condoms after he started making love to women post-menopause.
Never use condoms, son. They take away all the feeling.
And these weren't just interceptions. They were truly awful, either in terms of decision-making or accuracy. There was a terrible overthrow off his back foot for no reason that got picked off by Jawan Bentley that set up a last-second field goal before the half. There was also one that Wilson half-heartedly just flung sidearm that got picked off on the boundary by Devin McCourty. That's a 35-year-old safety picking you off, Zach. I know 35 might be young in your love life, but that's old in the NFL. He was clearly trying to throw the ball away here, but apparently thought his arm was good enough to make it all the way out of bounds. The last interception was on 3rd and 7, and Wilson was running out of real estate before chucking the ball over the head of his intended receiver and straight into the arms of Devin McCourty again. The Jets had a 10-3 lead in this game and ended up trailing 22-10 before a garbage time touchdown made the game look closer. Now, Wilson's struggles were largely getting ignored because the Jets were winning, the opposite of the Wilson I've been watching all season here in Denver. Somebody say Wilson and high knees and shirts? But this game made his inadequacies front and center, totally impossible to ignore. The Jets went from winning in spite of their quarterback to losing because of their quarterback, as will happen. One of the difficult things to grapple with, if you're a Jets fan, is that they have a team that is ready to compete right now, but they've spent 2 top 5 picks in the last half decade and have, as far as we can tell so far, blew it both times on their QBs. For as much shit as the Broncos get, remember the Jets also could have had Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson back in 2018, or Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson in 2017. Their team already has 5 wins, and they're probably out of the running for one of the top quarterbacks in 2023, so they'll have to get creative when it comes to replacing Zach Wilson, assuming he's unable to turn it around in these last 9 games of the season. To go full circle, I think Zach Wilson is going to teach us a couple things. First, we need a bigger sample size of greatness. Wilson was great for a year, But just because Joe Burrow worked out, that doesn't mean he's anything but the exception to the rule. We also need to focus a little less on playmaking and more on play execution. Playmaking, extending the play, improvising, whatever you want to call it, should supplement a steady diet of good, quick decision-making inside the structure of the play that was called in the huddle. Wilson has the playmaking ability. He should have been sacked 10 times against the Broncos, but wiggled his way out of pressure only to basically throw the ball away. So even his playmaking ability needs to find another gear at the NFL level. And when playmaking is the only way a QB can move the ball or get the ball in the end zone, they tend to press and become irresponsible, leading to back-breaking turnovers like the ones we saw with Zach Wilson. Guys like Mahomes and Allen aren't fully reliant on their playmaking ability, and thus they're able to throw the ball away when there's nothing there. Except, of course, when Josh Allen played the Packers. And keep in mind, it took a while to work that out of Josh Allen, that hero ball syndrome, okay? But Zach Wilson is not Josh Allen. Josh Allen's a freak. And even in his worst playing days, Josh Allen was showing us some flashes that were like, holy shit. I need some holy shit games from Zach Wilson. Because so far, yes, he is a bust. He's been worse than Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, but not by much. And after the Justin Fields bust episode this year, we watched him start to put it together. So there's hope. I just don't buy it. Thanks for watching That's Good Sports. Please subscribe here on YouTube. Check out my Power Rankings episode or the Trades episode. Every Monday we do a best and worst here. And yes, the Russell Wilson high knee shirts are available in the link below. Or the Teespring store below, whatever you see where the shirts are.